Hello and welcome to the Critic Show. I'm joined today by Chris Bayliss and Jack Davey, who wrote these fantastic words. Pedro Sánchez is everywhere at the moment. His decision to provide an amnesty to over 500,000 illegal immigrants provoked spats with Elon and fawning global press attention. An interview in the New Statesman and an op-ed in the New York Times have made him a crusader against dark digital reactionary forces the world over. Sadly for progressives, while Sanchez is an adept politician, he can't save the left. Jack, nobody is more responsible for the fact that Pedro Sánchez is everywhere than you. Why is he such an interesting figure?
Well, he's such an interesting figure because in Europe, there simply aren't that many left-wing leaders left. So he's the only one alongside Keir Starmer. And in a media environment where the left wing is so starved of positive headlines, his advocacy has really been catnip for the modern left who are desperate for a messiah or for a leader who can show them how they can actually win.
Okay.
You can putting him there alongside Keir Starmer, I think, probably highlights interesting things about both politicians. Well, to the extent to which Keir Starmer is really a politician in the classic sense of the word at all. I think the one thing that we can definitely say is that Sanchez is a far more inherently political character, and also just much better at politics in all of the senses of the word than Starmer, who seems to spend a lot of his time trying to find alternatives of doing almost anything but politics.
Yeah.
In terms of Sanchez's background, and obviously we focus a lot on, we often try and answer questions about the curiosity that is our Prime Minister by looking at his legal background. What is there in Sanchez's background that explains the politician that he's become? Where's he from? What gets him going?
Well, I think the first thing to consider here is that he's from a socialist party and a party system in Spain where, having come up through the party ranks, the knife fighting and the vendettas inside the party mean you have to be able to really make a good fist of it and really be very Machiavellian even just to survive in the middle and lower tiers. Mm-hmm. Whereas Keir Starmer just got parachuted in from being director of public prosecutions, and then because he was sensible as a Brexit secretary or shadow Brexit secretary, and then lied in the Labour leadership campaign, he just found himself to be prime minister. Whereas Pedro Sánchez had to fight like a dog. He lost an election, which many people thought would have been the end for him. He gets kicked out in 2016 by this Spanish Socialist Party, the Labour Party equivalent. Mm-hmm. He gets kicked out by their NEC, to use a UK Labour term. And then he and three of his best friends rent a Peugeot, and they travel around Spain in this Peugeot and go into every socialist local group, local campaign group. And from just those four men in that Peugeot, he wins the socialist leadership contest, and then a year later he's prime minister of Spain after calling a no confidence vote in the government. So he really has the cojones, as we say in Spain. He really has some real. I wrote about this in the Critic. Yeah, as a cycling fan, he has grinta, as the Italians say. So he really knows how to bare his teeth and enjoys a fight, which you just don't see in Keir Starmer.
And in terms of factionally, obviously, I'm aware that it's the PSOE, going back for the best part of 90 or 100 years, has had its issues with factionalism. What does he come from a distinct tradition within the party? Is he from the left? Is he from another wing of it? Where does he sit on the spectrum within the PSOE?
Well, we're seeing he came from an era where we forget it's maybe 13 years since, where when he was leader, first the Spanish Socialist Party, they were at neck and neck with the far left Podemos, and Podemos successor organizations, because the Spanish far left are even worse than like the British far left at like splitting amongst themselves. And so he comes from a like more traditional like, establishment PSOE background with he's always been firmly against, in Spain, the regional parties are still or used to be very strong. For the main conservatives, the PP, the Partido Popular, and the PSOE. He comes from, but he's always gone against, like, we call them like satraps in Spain, like we usually. He's always gone against the big regional bloc leaders who have a lot of power in Spanish politics. But he's always been very good at, he knows he's handsome, we call him El Guapo, famously. But he's always honestly been most concerned about his own self-advancement, which is a very good quality for a politician to have.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things you've written about Sanchez a lot for us, which is not criticism. I think one of the interesting things that you keep pulling out of your articles is his mastery of the factionalism and also the kind of regional rivalries and dynamics within Spanish politics. So why don't you just kind of lay out basically what he's doing there to keep himself in power?
Well, he's been in power since
It's 8 years now.
It's
isn't it?
2017.
But the way Spain works is they have a hunt system, so that's quite similar to Scotland, but Scotland's system is awful, but that's a topic for another podcast. But basically in Spain, it's, let's say, normally 40% left, 40% right, and then there's a 20% in the middle who are separatists or regional parties. And Sanchez realized that as long as there's a majority against the right wing, or then he only needs to win 33% of the vote, and can govern in a minority with separatist support, as long as the separatists are too scared of a right-wing, more Spanish nationalist government. Because when we consider regional or devolved politics in the UK, in Spain it's very different, because in Britain, the regions like Wales and Scotland, like the Northern Ireland's its own special case, Wales and Scotland have inferiority complexes compared to England. Whereas in Spain, the Catalans and the Basques have superiority complexes compared to the Spaniards. They're far richer than the average Spaniard outside Madrid. They have far more older bourgeoisies and networks from being far older commercial centers than like Castile. And so all that of Spanish politics is like, people in Spain really care about Catalan independence. Like, they'll say, oh, these Catalans think they're better than us, and they get the best deal already, and they just think they're better than us. Whereas in if you ask the average person in London about Scottish independence, or they just don't care. And so that really frames their politics.
I've always maintained that if English people were given a vote in any Scottish independence referendum, Scotland would be made independent overnight.
Yeah. And pardon me, and the point I should have said first, Pedro Sánchez, if only people who considered themselves Spanish or identified as Spanish voted in elections, he probably would never have been prime minister. Such is the power of the Basque and Catalan separatists.
Is it? So in my mind, I always imagined, keeping aside Basque separatism as a slightly different case, but Catalan separatism, I was thought of it was a bit like old school Quebec kind of separatism, in that when the Bloc Québécois sort of roared into sort of became seriously powerful in the 90s, it was to the detriment of the previous Conservative Party, and you saw the right of the right hand side of Canadian politics thereafter was completely had to be reoriented, given that the Conservatives had lost Quebec to the Bloc Québécois. Is there something? Is Catalan separatism? Is this bulwark that actually helps keep the Spanish left in power to some extent?
At this point, that's completely the case, because in Barcelona, the like poor people or the lower classes they vote for the Spanish Socialist Party, or in Catalonia, it's the branch office, as we'd say in Britain, and all the rich bourgeois vote for the Junts, or for, in the last 15 years, it's like been torn down and remade about 15 different times. But for the traditional right-wing parties of bourgeois parties, is probably the best way of saying it, of Catalan independence and conservatism. But the failed referendum attempt kind of broke that down. And also immigration in Barcelona, especially of Moroccans, has been huge, which has really only in the last few years has that the conservatism of Catalan independence really come to the fore. Because before that, it all just got washed into like Scotland, Ireland, for example, the uni cause of anti-liberalism from the left. But one of my first piece in the Critic, I think, was about this, that there's this new party called Aliança Catalana. I'll give some Catalan pronunciation. And they are extremely ultra right-wing, probably only like Rassemblement National.
Yeah.
I wrote in the Critic that one of their slogans of their leader is they want a Catalonia free from the Spanish state, free from the French state, and free from the Islamic State.
Oh, that's staunch.
And
I might try that in Yorkshire.
What do they think about the EU?
they're all pro-EU, because I think or whatever version, I think there's a base version of the EU I think people can subscribe to. And also, all Spanish separatists, or the main Spanish separatists who are all irredentists and want to claim parts of France as well. So the Catalans want to claim Roussillon, which is, and there's some wilder ones who want to like,
as in sort of Languedoc-Roussillon.
like Perpignan,
Yeah.
and what's taken by the French on the Treaty of the Pyrenees in 1661. And then the Basques want to take
What about Andorra?
Andorra. They consider, I think they're fine with Andorra, but they consider Andorra part of the
Catalonia.
Catalonia as well, because they speak Catalan. And the Basques, well, the Basques is another entire rabbit hole, but the Basques want to take all of Iparial there, which is the French Basque country. Even places which, well, there's no Basque state which they call for has ever existed in all of history, and yet they have this language. It started off as blood, like ethno-nationalism, and now it's like linguistic nationalism. And so, but they have these huge irredentist claims, which I think only like the EU as an artifice could ever sustain.
Because it's really, it's an incredibly different, it's not like Catalan, which sort of somewhere between Spanish and French. The Basque language is it's a complete linguistic
Anomaly,
one on its own there. There's nothing else.
And the Basque country's very interesting.
Doesn't it have some weird connection to Finnish, the Basque language?
Well, it's not or no one actually knows. It's not an Indo-European
language.
But the story of the Basque, so right now, the government is kept in power by Catalan conservatives who refuse to call an election, even though they're getting destroyed in the polls. They're very scared of calling an election. This party's called Junts. It's the party which Carles Puigdemont, who was the famous exiled referendum leader. They are terrified of calling an election, because if they call an election and the right wing get in, it would be similar to the SNP in 1979. They're terrified of that scenario. And so they're trying to push back. And that's why no legislation can really pass, because they're saying no to everything, because we don't want to call an election and we don't want to support the government. And they are getting like shellacked by these far-right Catalans to the point where they're almost neck and neck. The Catalan right has the pro-independence right, has completely split. And the government's other partner they need to stay in power is Bildu, which is, I don't want to get sued, but they are quite similar to the Sinn Féin, to the IRA, or the post-1949 ETA, because when ETA, the Basque terrorist group, was ongoing, it was like truly horrific. Like the last murder of an immigrant politician by a terrorist group for being an immigrant by a terrorist group in Europe was probably ETA's murder of Miguel Angel Blanco, who was the son of Galician immigrants to the Basque country in 1997. And that caused huge protests in Spain. And like the anger Spanish people have towards like, Bildu is incredibly large, but it is like Sinn Féin supporting a Labour government. In maybe if you're in when animus against the IRA was still a lot bigger feature of British society.
I think it would be great if the Critic Show could get the unique distinction of being sued by both Sinn Féin and Bildu at the same time.
Both are legitimate political parties. Please do not sue.
Some of
I don't actually believe that.
to be more precise.
You've inhaled alien before you sell.
To be more precise, some of Bildu's leaders were once members of ETA, but there's no official organizational links between the two.
Okay, well, as Jerry Adams said in court the other day, many people wore black berets. Benny Hill wore a black beret.
Did he actually say?
So you've kind of touched on the what's going on with the resurgent right there. So, and then again in one of the pieces you write for us, you write about the Falange and their kind of slightly resurgent. So why don't you walk us through what's going on the right, why they're resurgent? Is it just immigration? What's going on?
Well, first of all, everything in Spain goes back to the regions. Like Vox, who are the first breakaway party, they split off because they don't agree with the terms of ETA's demobilization or the amnesty for ETA back in the early 2010s. And they don't do much for about 4 or 5 years. And then the twin issues of Catalonia and the Spanish state not going hard enough on the people who tried the wildcat referendum and immigration, especially Andalusia, really power their rise. And then the recent times in Spanish right-wing politics, there's there's Vox who come in the 2000s. There's also a party who are forgotten now called Ciudadanos, they peak at 16% of the vote in the first 2019 election in Spain. And they're from Catalonia, and they have a centrist anti-corruption, because corruption is a huge problem in Spanish politics, especially in the 2010s. A very centrist Macron-like, but with a bit more conservative teeth. But in the 2019, and so they rise to 16% of the vote, which in Spanish politics is a lot. And then in 6 months' time, they lose all their vote because they refuse to do a deal with Pedro Sánchez. And then people are like, oh, what are we centrists for? We can just vote full-fat right-wing, or we can vote for Sanchez if we want a government. They get torn in two. And so the Spanish right-wing politics is actually moving back towards a Pepe who are at 30% of the vote, maybe depending on the poll, and Vox who almost entirely because of immigration and a general Sanchez just annoying Spanish right-wing voters have managed to climb to just shy of 20% in most polling. And then beyond Vox, because Vox are probably most similar to Tommy Robinson's Advance UK. Like Anne Pascal, the Vox leader, did a speech for Tommy Robinson's rally in London, in United Kingdom, in wherever that was. And so they are.
I was about to say, I don't think. What do you say, Tommy Robinson's Restore? It's not him, is it?
No,
it's Ben Habib. It's
Advance.
It's Advance. He does.
That's Ben Habib.
They're far beyond Nigel Farage. I think they want to. I think they use the word remigration a lot. They say they want to deport 7 million people. And Spain's population is 47 million people, maybe a bit more.
Would that include sort of Vaz and his wife down in the Costa del Sol?
No, I think it's just illegal immigrants and immigrants who aren't paying their way. It's not sort of expats, but also, and then beyond Vox, there's this party called the party is called The Party's Over, Se acabó la fiesta, which in Spain isn't as much of a problem as a name.
Yeah.
And they got 3% I think they got in a European election and got 3 MEPs. They promptly lost 2, so it's just 1. But it's basically a conspiratorial Telegram group which became a party, and they get 3% in a lot of elections. And so a Sunday ago or the Sunday before, there were elections in Castilla y León, which is like the plain of Spain, to the north of Madrid. And Vox increased its vote slightly. The Conservatives increased their vote. But Vox could have got 3 more seats. But because of this, like, kind of Joker party, to be honest, they got 2%, I think they got 2%, but they took, because of the way the system works, Vox lost 3 MPs. And so it's just a lot of anger because the Sanchez strategy is annoy the right as much as possible, get the far right as popular as possible, because we see this in Britain too. When a left-wing government just keeps doing things, and the right-wing is just in opposition, and the right-wing is doing opposition, you can't do anything. Far right-wing voters who are on Twitter all day, they see the news getting worse and worse, and they just get bored, they get frustrated, and they radicalize. And so that's been what's happening in Spain. So the main Conservative Party keeps losing votes to Vox. This is exactly what Pedro Sánchez wants, because he wants a really, really scary, really extreme Vox, and then he can do it's me or Vox election. Like, Vox will be the Nick Clegg of any Conservative government. Do you really want Vox there?
That's the end of the free section of the Critic Show, but the conversation goes on. If you'd like to hear the full episode, subscribe at outpoststudios.net.